All right, we're going to call to order the public hearing on the amendment to the 2018 Annual Action Plan. It is currently Monday, May 15th, 2023, and it is 6:32 p.m. I'm Mayor Edward Sundquist for today's public hearing. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the public notice into the record.
Notice is hereby given that the Mayor of Jamestown, New York will hold a public hearing regarding an amendment to the 2018 Annual Action Plan. The public hearing will be held at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, May 15th, 2023 in the City Council Chambers, second floor Municipal Building, 200 East 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York. All persons wishing to comment on this matter are invited to speak at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll receive that public notice as Exhibit A into the hearing record. At this time, we'll ask if there are any members of staff that wish to be recognized to talk on the amendment to the 2018 Annual Action Plan.
Thank you.
Recognizing Crystal Surdick, who's the Director of Development for the City of Jamestown.
Thank you. So I want to just give a quick background. This is actually an amendment to the 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 Annual Action Plans. This is for the home program specifically. The reason for this amendment is we have funds that have been allocated on an annual basis that have not been utilized in those specific years that we need to move into another program so that we can get those funds expended. So with that, we are actually able to allocate some funding to a first-time homebuyers program, which we have supported in the past. This funding will go to one of our community housing development organizations, CRIC, for the first-time homebuyers program that they currently administer. This is a great way for us to be able to expend those funds that we certainly don't want to see go to waste, and there's definitely a need. CRIC is ready to go and ready to administer those funds immediately, and they do have applicants in their program that are waiting for funding to come through. This is a program that is that HUD has supported in the past, and certainly something that we would like to see as far as first-time home buyers and more home ownership in the city. So it is in alignment with our annual action plans, in alignment with our 5-year consolidated plan, and our housing strategies.
Thank you, Ms. Surdick. Anything further?
That's it.
Thank you. We will ask after public comment if there are any members of the council that would like to speak. Do you mind if we do public comment first?
That's fine. I do have some questions.
Excellent. At this time, I'll ask the clerk if there's any correspondence that has been received to be entered into the record.
There is none.
Okay. We will now allow any members of the public that wish to speak. If you are interested in speaking, please step up to the microphone. I will need you to state your name, your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak either for or against the amendment. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
I'm the only citizen here, which is typical of our problem in Jamestown, is getting citizens to show up and talk about something. It's important, I think, that citizens...
Mr. Chairman, if you could...
Doug Shane, 225 Bowen Street. Sometimes I forget you don't know who I am.
We have many citizens here.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Please go ahead.
First of all, I want to applaud this program in the sense of getting home ownership highlighted in the community. A much needed aspect of housing and what the housing needs are in the community, especially when you look at the percentage of rental versus percentage of owner occupied. And the trend is going toward rental, not toward owner occupied. However, I do have some questions, and this is what it's about, questions to be answered. And I have a copy of this here now that you have. First of all, the direction of the programs being sublet out to subrecipients should be something that the city council fully understands and the ramifications of what will happen why you do that. The issue at hand is that there's costs for administration. Actually, if you look at the math on this, it's 12.5% per annual grantees. That's reasonable in some respects because HUD admin allows for close up to 20%. However, there is a question in my mind whether this is first place or last place money. In other words, if a homeowner wants to buy a house and there has to be a financial arrangement between a mortgage or a purchase offer, is this first place or last place money? In other words, take a typical, and Crystal can answer this to answer our question. What's the typical price of a house in Jamestown on the market tonight? Is it $100,000, $75,000, whatever the price is, would require usually a 20% payment as a down payment. So this $4,000 is very minimal in the sense of the total perspective of home ownership. And that would only be if a house is fully compliant with the housing code. So I would assume that all these houses before they're purchased are going to be compliant with our housing code. If they're not, well then the cost aspects escalate. In addition to that, it's all predicated on money that has not been encumbered, about time and spending of it. So what happens in the future, we're looking at 2026, there'll be another round of community development and home applications. So does that mean that money's coming from money that has not been encumbered or money that can come from money that hasn't been approved? So as you know, the action plan is relevant over a 5-year period of time. One of my other questions is, when's the first time City Council has become aware of this amendment process? Amendment process are not something taken lightly in a sense of spending down community development home funds. There's a rationale, a reason, a capability, lack of capacity, et cetera, et cetera. All this stuff is important to making your local decisions relevant, because basically what you're doing is you're contracting this out to another entity. Now that's fine, I'm not saying that shouldn't be done, but I want you to be aware of the return of investment on what that really means. So as we move along on this program, and it's an annual allocation.
You have 1 minute remaining, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Allocation, it would require, I guess, an understanding is that what the progress of the programs are going to be. And I think that's written in here. But on the other hand, if City Council is attuned to what needs to be done in the community about housing, the failure or the success would be indicated by the aspects of utilizing these funds. So these funds should be treated lightly. I applaud home ownership, but $4,000 is a little amount when it comes to home ownership. And again, the critical point is this last place or first place money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Champion. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? I'll ask one more time. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? At this time, we'll ask if there are any members of the council that wish to be recognized. Any questions? Ms. Gruba.
Thank you. I commend you for the program because, again, as been pointed out, we have more rental than home ownership, and anything that we can do to encourage people to buy homes is greatly appreciated. Is this program operating similarly to what used to be called the CHODO? And how many CHODOs do we still have within the city? Because it did operate in the past, it was very successful, and I know people who worked at a particular not-for-profit agency who were able to qualify, who worked full-time, could not afford the closing costs, and this put them over the hurdle, so to speak, so that they could become homeowners. Some live in Ward 4, they've done very well, they fixed the homes up that they bought, but this was the last piece of money that they needed to finish it so that they could qualify for a mortgage, but coming up with all of that money for closing was a difficulty that they just could not manage. One was a single parent with a couple of children. So that's what my question is. Is this similar to what a Chodo is? And do we have any other Chodos, or is CRIC the only current Chodo? And I apologize, I can't remember the acronym, but I know it's a Chodo and you've referred to it in the past as well.
Yep, so that's the Community Housing Development Organization. So CRIC and CODE are both certified for our Chodo programs. This program is actually, though CRIC is a Chodo, operates separately from Chodo funds. So each year, HUD requires us to allocate at least 15% to Chodo organizations. That is a requirement. That's not something that is negotiable, and it has to be at least 15%. It can be more. The Chodo programs are a little different because they operate more like a home rehabilitation, renovation, and then sale. So there's a rehab component to it, and a I can't think of the term that HUD uses, but resale. So it's an acquisition, rehabilitation, and resale program. Those properties are, the Chodos present to us each year for when they have a property that they would like to enter into that program and to utilize those Chodo funds for. This program is separate. It's something that CRIC and COI both do. And so, like you mentioned, your friend or your colleagues that have utilized this program before, this is that sort of gap funding. So it helps with down payment and closing costs. It also requires its participants to participate in a program that lasts over, I believe it's 9 weeks. They learn kind of all of the basics of being a homeowner, responsibilities that they have as a homeowner, some financial, what's the term? Financial literacy, how to and when to pay your taxes, how to roll that into your mortgage payments, how to change your furnace filter, right? So all of those kinds of things are a requirement of the program in order for them to qualify for these funds.
I have another question.
Mhm.
Right now, how many people do they have in the pipeline coming from CRIC? Do they, I know they run these classes, they run them in Spanish as well, they run them in Mayville, they run them down here, to try to open it up to as many people as possible. Do you know how many people they have currently that have been through the program or in a current program that might be eligible for this?
They have a waiting list right now. Do you know, Casey, did you have, you talked to Josh?
I don't have the exact number, but they have several waiting for this to get passed and approved, so then they can move forward in purchasing their homes. It's been really successful in Dunkirk, and so we pretty much just utilized what they were doing with Dunkirk and tailoring it to the Jamestown.
And this is a program they've run in the past.
I know they have.
And COI does as well, so.
I just wanted to make sure
Absolutely.
that we're covered this paired with the children.
Any further questions, Ms. Fruit?
Not right at the moment.
Do you have a
Ms. Hagel?
total dollar amount for the program?
So this is,
This is a different copy. I have a final copy in my office right now that has gotten rid of that 8 to 10, 10 to 12 range, and is stuck with the 10, 12, 14, and 14.
Okay.
So the numbers you'll be looking at is the 45, 54, 63, and 63.
So we have the 225 left from that?
yeah.
Okay. That was me.
Yep. And just to explain why the significant amendment, when we are allocated home funds and we start to put together those home programs or those projects are home-specific projects. So homeowners apply for home, we do a scope of work, determine what types of work need to be done in their home. We may start a project and think that it is going to cost $45,000 and it may end up costing closer to $60,000. Or we may start a project and we think it's going to cost, and it doesn't happen as often, but we may think it's going to cost $45 and it only costs $25. So that number, when we open those projects in our, it's called IDIS, it's a system that we use to track all of those projects. it may change, so we may think it's going to be X amount of dollars, and it ends up being a little bit less or a little bit more. Those funds, though we can see them kind of cumulative, when we open a project, we don't combine the years into one project to pay for one project. So when we draw down funds, we draw those funds down all from 1 year, if that makes sense. So what we end up with at the end, and where we are tonight, why we need to amend part of 2018, part of 2019, part of 2020, part of 2021, is because we have kind of these random amounts left over that we need to pull together to kind of reallocate them as one lump sum. Does that make sense?
Do we know what that amount is?
That's what I just asked.
Yes,
The
so,
225.
yeah,
That's what I just asked, the
Yeah.
225.
That's from the prior years.
yes.
Will there be additional revenue for the 23, 24, 25, 26?
Yeah, so each year we receive an allocation for home funds. Right now, we have close to $1 million in home funds that need to be expended. So this will help us to spend some of those funds down in a way that has really short-term, immediate, but high impact with this program.
I think you're confused. The loss of 2018 through 221 is her proposal, their proposal for 2023 through 2026.
Yeah, and that's
Taking
just
that
the-
fund and moving it to
Yeah.
these years.
It's just those years will be allocated in those years. We will not lose any funding from
Right.
any year. And in fact, in all of the years, 2022, 2023, and going forward, we'll still receive additional home funds. So this will help us spend down some funds that are just kind of lingering.
That you're moving forward?
Yeah.
I have another question. If in the event, is there any covenant or restriction on, they get these funds, they get into the home, and in another year or two, they decide, I'm out of here, I'm done, I'm selling, is there any clawback of funds or any restriction on the time frame for sale, much like,
We have an anti-speculation agreement
Okay.
through HUD that is a 5-year anti-speculation.
okay, so they have to stay in the home or own it for 5 years? What if they vacate the home and just, then will they still recover? Say they don't sell it, but they vacate it?
They'll still be
Okay.
on the hook for that. Now,
Okay.
how that is, how that happens, or how that, that would end up having to be kind of a civil judgment sort of thing, but.
And then one other, what if they default on their mortgage? Is there anything in, and I don't know, I read through quickly,
This would-
but is there a default provision, so if they get into it, they lose a job, they can no longer afford the mortgage payments, even with whatever attempts are made to try to
Mhm.
keep them in the home? What happens then? Who ends up with the house? Does it go into foreclosure? Would it go into a 19A program that we're doing?
I think
or-
that's all a possibility. One thing with this program, though there's a 5-year anti-speculation agreement that they do sign at the time, what we have found with HUD is that we have the ability, if the property is transferred to another low to moderate income person who is willing to take on whatever time is left in that anti-speculation agreement, HUD will allow that to occur.
Any further questions from council members?
Yeah, I just have a quick one. Some of these things that are listed here, whether it would be driveway furnished or
That's
just,
a different.
You're looking at a different one.
okay, I'll wait for that question.
Yes,
Never
I'll
mind.
be happy to answer that later.
Thank you.
Obviously, these funds are either use it or lose it. Would that be
Yes.
an accurate statement?
Correct.
Mhm.
Great.
And this is not uncommon, just so everyone is aware. This is something that is done, not every year, but it's something that is fairly common. Every few years or so, we have to kind of reset and just make sure that we are moving funds into a category that, we can responsibly spend them quickly.
I do have another question. What is the income guideline for eligibility?
That will be based on HUD's annual,
Okay.
yep,
Okay, so I'm assuming a larger family, like
Yes.
husband, wife, and several kids would be a higher income threshold than a single
Absolutely.
parent.
I have an additional question. The $4,000, is there any, in today's times of inflation, that might not cover very much of any cost for home buying. What's necessary or what can be done to increase that amount? Is that a federal regulation or something we do internally?
This program is set up to be a portion of closing costs and a portion of down payment, so it's not meant to be, it's meant to be kind of a gap. So if applicants are able to get a mortgage, but they need a little bit of that assistance, that's what this is meant to do. It's not meant to replace mortgage or to provide additional mortgage assistance. We are looking into and have been working to develop a completely separate mortgage assistance program, which is a program that is eligible under HUD and our home program, but that's still in development.
Great. Any further questions from our council members? Wonderful. Any further information from our staff?
Just that we will, upon approval at the end of this month, so we will ask that this is voted on and approved by council at the voting session next week, and then we will submit it to HUD for their final approval, and then we'll be able to transfer the funds.
Thank you, Ms. Surdick. You took my
Thank
final information, so I appreciate you
Sorry.
doing that. At this time, hearing no further testimony or public